I have a job and the Lakers have a job. I'm going nowhere, I can tell you that. Straight and up front. I'm going to be here until Steve says get out. I plan to be here a long time.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball. Today we're going to be looking back a relatively eventful Tuesday in the NBA with 6 games on and then previewing the 9 games for Wednesday. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. We will start where we always do on this show, of course, with
Monstrous Line of the Night.
And the monstrous line of the night goes to Brook Lopez of the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, there were 2 guys who were really in consideration for the monstrous today. It was 2 guys who were actually traded for each other, Brook Lopez and DAngelo Russell. Amazingly, the Lakers have neither of those guys, still just 1 year on from the deal. 1.5 years on from the deal. Lopez does get the monstrous line of the night. 28 points, including 5 triples, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, 4 blocks. He was 8 of 14 from the field and 7 of 10 from the free throw line. Lopez has been an absolute star this season. Someone who was getting drafted really, really late, like you're talking last couple of rounds of the draft. I was all about him in that zone of the draft. I didn't think he'd become the 52nd best player, and to be honest, had no idea he'd be the 27th best guy in the last 2 months, back to almost Brooklyn Nets type of value, but doing it in a completely different way. Back then, Lopez was that top 30, top 20 guy by scoring 20 points a game. Now, he's scoring 13 points a game, but having almost 3 blocks, hitting over 2 threes, getting a steal a game, 89% from the line in those last 27 games. Unbelievable value from Brook Lopez, one of the absolute steals of the draft. Astonishing that the Lakers couldn't use him properly last season and then let him go to sign a minimum contract in Milwaukee when he would have fit perfectly on this team. And you can't say, he wouldn't have signed with the Lakers. He wouldn't have, probably. But that's also because of the way they treated him last season and the way they didn't use him. And that was really poor coaching from Luke Walton with Lopez last season. He has absolutely fired up this year and is putting together just a consistent stretch run. And he, again, is one of these guys that we talk about, players are injury prone until they're not. Brook Lopez has now played 71 games this season, 74 the year before, 75 the year before that, 73 the year before that, 72 the year before that. So guys are injury prone until they are not. Remember when no one would touch this guy in drafts with a 10-foot pole? He was an Iron Man until he got hurt. I think he played 82 games his first 3 or 4 seasons in the NBA, then had 2 broken feet, and now is back to playing a consistent amount of games. Things change in that regard really, really quickly, and Lopez is a great indicator of that, as we're seeing right now.
Waiver wire line of the night.
The waiver wire line of the night. It's not all that grim for you Lakers fans because Kentavious CaldwellPope, he is your waiver wire line of the night. He did get hurt at the end of the game. We haven't heard any update on his ankle injury there. 34 minutes, including 35 points, 8 triples, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 steals, and a block on 60% shooting. His production has been quite up and down, but that's 4 or 5 big games in a row. And maybe not big games in a row, but his last 5 games, let's talk about them. 24 points with 4 triples in 31 minutes against the Bulls. 9, 5, and 2 with a steal and 2 blocks in 22 against the Raptors. 17 with 3 triples in 30 minutes against the Pistons. 11 and 4 with 2 threes in 28 minutes against the Knicks. And then this absolute explosion. Over the last 2 weeks, he is bordering on a top 100 player. Over the last 4 games, he is a top 70 player. He's hitting 3s. He's hitting 2s at a pretty decent rate. And by decent, I mean astonishingly high, 65%. But to be fair, over the last 40 games, he's hitting his 2s at 61%. So it's not that egregious that he's there. The 3s are going in. He's getting a steal a game. Now, he's not going to be for everybody. It's realistically just a really strong 3-point streamer with very, very good 2-point percentage and overall field goal percentage, which is not something that you always think of with Kentavious CaldwellPope. But with Josh the Hitman Hart really, really laboring with this knee injury, with LeBron, who knows what the hell's going on with him. with Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball out for the year, there is value here. And he pushes himself into that three-point streaming territory now, into that category of guys who can be relied upon. And maybe you look to add him as a consistent streamer, as someone you look at in 12-team leagues as we move forward. But another big game from KCP. It's been a nice little 2-week stretch of performances from him. High efficiency, high three-pointers, a good amount of, a decent amount of steals in that time as well, and it is really, really working out well at the right time of the year. In fantasy playoffs, you just hope that we don't, it doesn't get a pin put in it at some point as the season moves on. But big performance there from Kentavious CaldwellPope. Today's show is brought to you by DraftKings. And did you know that you can fill out an NCAA tournament bracket on DraftKings this year? That's right, DraftKings is the leader in daily fantasy sports, and they have a totally free bracket with tens of thousands of dollars up for grabs. Everybody fills out a bracket during the tournament. You might as well do it on an award-winning app with tons of free prizes. For the first time ever, DraftKings is offering a bracket battle promotion with $64,000 in prizes. You can pick whoever you want to win it. I think I'm going to go with Duke again. I don't know really all that much about college basketball, but just go with Duke for the fun of it and just to see Zion progress as much as possible. You know how your brackets work. Before the tip-off of the first game of the tournament, pick the winner of every game, every round. That's all there is to it, and the best part is you can play for free by using the code DRIBBLE. You can even set up a private group for you and your friends to compete for bragging rights. Download the DraftKings app or head to DraftKings.com now. Use that code DRIBBLE to enter the bracket battle promotion for free and compete for your share of $64,000 dues. That's the code DRIBBLE to enter the bracket battle for free. Only at DraftKings, the game inside the game. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details. Let's move on to the next one. It is the deep leaguer of the night, and it goes to Josh Okogie of the Minnesota Timberwolves. A second consecutive strong game from Okogie. 30 minutes, 19 points, 3 triples, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, and 3 steals. He was a guy that graded out pretty well when looking at rookie projections or rookie translations. He was thrust into a much larger role than expected this season with this ongoing injury from Bob Covington. And even his playing time has been up and down. But the last 2 games, 40 combined points in 65 minutes, 6 triples, 4 steals, 9 rebounds, and 4 assists. Today he went 19-4-1. With 3 steals and 3 threes. The shooting is at an unsustainably high level. The usage is probably higher than we expect from Okogie. The game before this, he played just 16 minutes. The game before these last 2, 16 minutes. 23 the game before that. 26, 19. In fact, he scored 40 points in the last 2 games combined. In his previous 5 games, he had scored 13 points combined. He has had a steal, though, in 6 consecutive games and had 3 steals in 2 of those 6 games. So that's elevating his numbers up. But realistically, he's just a deeper league sort of guy. If you're looking for some steals, he can be a 14-team streamer. If he can maintain 30 minutes a night, I'd be interested. I'm just not convinced he will. Again, no Covington, no Teague, no Rose. That is all helping Okogie. Plus, he's getting this weird spike in usage, and the shots are going in at an astonishingly high rate, which won't continue almost definitely. But he's showing flashes. He's showing that he can be an NBA starter. He's showing that he can be a top 100 fantasy player at some point in the next 3 years. I think that's a decent level of expectation. We know guys with good steal rates tend to progress pretty well. The shot's got to come around. It's starting to develop. That's a positive sign. 28% from 3 over the course of the season, but over the last 14 games, 36%. A huge step forward in that regard. Got to get better from the line. Got to get better in rebounding and assists to really have an impact. But I think he can be a standard league guy, maybe in the 4th season of his contract, depending on what the Timberwolves do with Andy Wiggins. But even if they don't, we could see situations where we get Covington as a permanent power forward, Wiggins as a 3, and Okogie as a 2, because Rose isn't going to be there long term as an option there at shooting guard. I wouldn't expect, and Šarić has really been struggling in his time. So interesting stuff there from Josh Okogie.
Young gun of the night.
The young gun of the night is Benny Simmons of the Philadelphia 76ers, stepping it up with Joel Embiid out. 38 minutes, 28, 8 and 5, 1 steal and 2 blocks. He missed 1 field goal, 11 of 12 from the field. He missed 4 free throws, 6 of 10 from the line, but you come to expect that from Simmons, the 34th ranked player over the course of the season, and that's significantly higher in a punt free throw build, and of course punting threes as well. He's jumping into that top 20 type of discussion, averaging 17, 9 and 8. not all that far off his rookie numbers where he averaged 16, 8, and 8, an extra rebound, an extra point. Yeah, he's averaging fewer assists and steals, so that's hurting him overall, but higher efficiency from the field and from the free throw line. That's helping him, of course. This season still hasn't hit a 3, but at least has attempted some, or attempted one at least. It will go in this year. I feel confident that my confidence maybe is waning with 11 games left, that he is going to hit a 3. I do think he will. I hope he does. But Simmons has been, for what you need from him, he's doing exactly what he needs. Now, maybe him topping out at this level is, where's the improvement come here in Simmons? Does he ever become a 20-point per game scorer? That's probably going to be a struggle. But he can be a consistent top 20 punt free throw guy. And if that jumps up, maybe then he can become a top 20 overall sort of a player. But another good game without Joel Embiid for Ben Simmons. The dud of the night feels a bit unfair to give it to a Brooklyn Nets player given how good their game was and how good of a comeback and big of a win that was. But Spencer Dinwiddie struggled once again. His last 3 games have been brutal. 24 minutes for Spence, 10 points with 3 assists and a steal. I said before the week that Dinwiddie and LeVert were drops with only 2 games this week. And then in the first game this week, they both really struggled. Dinwiddie is not a guy that I'm necessarily holding on to. They played the Lakers on Friday. And then the next game is against the Blazers on Monday. And they only have 3 games next week anyway. He's the 104th ranked player on a per-game basis this season, Dinwiddie, and over the last 10 games since he returned from injury, he's only ranked 140th. It should be a pretty easy decision to move on from him in 12-team leagues with performance, with form, with schedule, all are pointing to that direction. So I think he's a pretty clear drop in 10s and 12s. 14-teamers, you probably hold on to him, but if you need the games played volume for the rest of this week, where you might get 4 games out of his roster spot to qualify for the next round, you got to do it. His upside's not that high, especially with the way that DAngelo Russell is playing, that you got to consider him a must-hold player. The plus-minus goats of the day, Andre Iguodala had the best net rating, plus 80.1, while Prison Mike was a disaster for the Sixers, a negative 120 in his 15 minutes before he fouled out. Let's look at some injury news. Dazza Collison sat this game out with a quad injury. It looks like he's going to miss the next game as well for the Pacers. It was Tyreke Evans who really stepped up in today's game. It's really hard to trust Tyreke because in the previous games that Collison missed, it had been Corey Joseph. Joseph drew the start. He played only 20 minutes, and in plenty of opportunities when Evans had started, he'd really shit the bed. But he thrives when the ball's in his hands. So if you want to take a flyer on him, perhaps it's probably more 14-team than anything. Kid Gilchrist suffered a head injury today. He's going to be tested for a concussion. That just helps boost the value of someone like Miles Bridges for D performance and Frank the Tank Kaminsky, who gets a couple of extra minutes there, while Taj Gibson exited the Timberwolves game with a calf issue. If he is out, deeper leagues will want to pay attention to Gorgie Dieng, while Dario Saric gets maybe a couple of extra minutes, pushing him more into the 14-team league discussion type area. Let's go into these games now from Tuesday, the 6 of them, talk about them from a fantasy point of view. The first game that we take a look at, the Philadelphia 76ers and the Charlotte Hornets. Big win for the Sixers in the end. They were looking like they were going to lose without Joel Embiid. They win 118-114. Jimmy Butler, general soreness, was great again. 23, 4, and 9 with 2 steals and a block, while Toby Harris saw his usage rate jump up without Embiid, unsurprisingly. 22 and 11. Expect that to drop off next game. While JJ Redick, absolutely on fire to begin this game. 21 points in the first half, ended with just 27, but 7 triples, 10 rebounds, 8 assists. That is, it's a surprise.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
You look at him as a back-end points and threes streamer, and this sort of game is just a real bonus. Amir Johnson was the surprise starter for Embiid. I thought it was going to be Boban, and they'd give him pretty decent minutes, but yeah, I questioned it at the time, giving Boban all of those backup minutes and playing him as much as he did. He just was always going to struggle. It appears that Brett Brown has realized that now, and we had Boban play 11 minutes, Jonah Bolden played 12 minutes, and Amir Johnson played 17 minutes, filling in for Joel Embiid. It will be interesting to see if Brown does go with Boban as that primary backup center moving forward, but he struggled in this one quite a bit. Well, Prison Mike, as I mentioned, just a disaster. 1 rebound in his 15 minutes. He'd been getting 25 minutes a night as that backup big man wing type of a player. It wasn't good here. Kemba Walker has really killed the Sixers in the past. He got into really early foul trouble, so only 28 minutes. Still had 21, 4, and 4, but not the best night. While Jeremy Lamb is killing it in a bench role. 26 points in 29 minutes with 11 rebounds. His value, when he first was benched, he played like 20 minutes, 19 minutes. You go, well, what's going on here? But then they realise that Miles Bridges isn't that good, and they've pushed Lamb back up. As for Bridges, probably one of his better games. 29 minutes, 8 and 10 with 2 steals, the extra playing time with the injury to Kid Gilchrist, but only a very, very deep league guy, while Frank the Tank had 14 points, and Batum had just the 9 in his 27 minutes. Marvin Williams, terrible again, a pretty clear 12-team league drop for me. Very, very low upside guy, while Bismack Biyombo started in place of Cody Zeller, and we know the results there. They were terrible because Bismack Biyombo is not good. The next game, the Houston Rockets, they smacked the Atlanta Hawks 121-105. Jimmy Harden had 31, 8 and 10, and Chris Paul 13 with 11 assists and 3 steals. But I guess the name that I'm getting asked a lot about here is Big Daniel House. 33 minutes for Housey, 19 points with 6 triples, 3 rebounds and 2 assists. And he's going to get another big opportunity on Wednesday with Eric Gordon out. He's supplanting Gerald Green. He's probably playing better than definitely playing better than Austin Rivers and Iman Shumpert. So a decent role is there for him. I just don't know that I fully buy this shooting. Now, since he's come back, he's been great. 35 minutes, 18 points, 4 triples. 28 minutes, 14 and 7 with 2 threes. And then today's game, 19 points with 6 triples. But he has hit 50, 67 and 55% of his threes in those games. 55, 83 and 50% of his field goals in total. 1 steal and 0 blocks in those games. And it's coming on the back of very unsustainable shooting, because you look at those and you go, well, that's enough to be a top 100 guy, because in those games he's a top 100 player, averaging 17 with 4 triples. It's on 59% shooting and 55 from 3, and it's going to come down. And will he play 32 minutes a night? Probably not. But you can take a flyer on him for Wednesday, because the ability for him is there. They like him. He's going to play over Green and Shumpert and Rivers, and maybe he plays 26, 27 a night moving forward. He won't shoot this well. He can be a stream type option. He's more of a 14-team, 16-team guy with value on this Wednesday with Eric Gordon out. But just be aware that there is a lot of unsustainability on what Danny House is doing at the moment. The next game we look at, the absolutely checked out Los Angeles Lakers lost to the Bucks 101-115. Rajon Rondo, just minutes through the roof, 39 of them, 13, 6 and 10 with 2 steals. We've got to keep holding Rondo. You know, I don't think he's all that good of an on-court player, but the production's there, the minutes are there, fine. Didn't shoot well, 6 of 16, while Alex Caruso, big sexy, 4 points in 22 minutes for Caruso with 2 assists and 2 steals. Missed all 6 of his shots. I talked about him the other day, how the defensive numbers and the shooting was probably going to drop. Well, it dropped in a hard way. Still got the 2 steals, and he has some use as an assists and steals type of a streamer, more for 14-teamers. Kyle Kuzma, the future MVP, has been absolutely shitful. 17 points on 17 shots. He's not a drop. I worry about his long-term future. I don't know where he gets better or what he becomes as a better fantasy guy. I've said this for the 2 years he's been in the NBA. I do worry about his overall upside, and we're really seeing that now. While the worst trade of the last 2 years, Mike Muscala for Ivica Zubac. Muscala at least started today for LeBron James and played 11 minutes and had 2 points. As for LeBron, I worry that we may not see LeBron again this season. I don't know that for sure. I just think that the fact that he sat out today with a sore groin, he was clearly not right when coming back from the groin. It cost him a lot of time. It was a significant tear, is what I understand of that groin issue. That cost him all that time. He came back. He wasn't quite right. The Lakers have got nothing to play for. I would not be stunned if we see another week's absence, or that's the end of LeBron for this season. Yeah, just missing the last 2.5 weeks to 3 weeks of the season. I think that's a real possibility here for LeBron. You're bumping the value of JaVale McGee, who played 32 minutes, KCP, who played 34, and then you throw these other blokes in there who aren't going to be big impact guys. But McGee was interesting, 11 boards and 2 blocks. That's enough to at least give him utility in 12-team formats. For the Bucks, there was no Yanni, of course, no Malcolm Brogdon. So Chris Middleton had 30 and 10 with 5 assists and 4 triples. Bledsoe can't hit his free throws anymore, but 14, 8 and 7 with 4 steals are nice counting numbers. Well, Nick Mirotic. Now, it wasn't that Mirotic got big minutes because Yanni was out, because he played exactly the same minutes as he did against the Sixers. But instead, he turned in 23 points instead of 2 points. 3 triples, 6 rebounds. As long as Yanni and Ersan Ilyasova are out, who both missed today's games, Mirotic can be that stream guy, but we've seen the struggles he's had in fitting in providing consistent enough production on this Bucks team that I wouldn't label him a must roster when everyone's back. Paddy Connaughton stepped it up, 36 minutes, 13, 8 and 4. That's really good. If you could rely upon that, you'd add him. You can't, because again, no Ersan and no Yanni. allowed those extra minutes and shots to go to Paddy, while DJ Wilson got extra minutes as well. 31 minutes, 3 and 5. Couldn't shoot. Really just a deep league guy, while Tone Snell, he's a disaster. Only 15 minutes with no Sterling Brown, no Gianni Antetokounmpo, no Ersan Ilyasova, no Malcolm Brogdon. Budenholzer's woke to the situation that Tony Snell is not good, and we're seeing that play out. And I wouldn't be stunned when Sterlo returns if Snell is out of the rotation, even with Brogdon done. I wouldn't be shocked at that, and you know not to have him in any sort of fantasy format. The Golden State Warriors beat the Wolves on the road. Steph really getting it together at the right time. 36 with 5 assists and 8 triples. Durant was underwhelming, 17, 2 and 9, while Clay had 28 with 4 triples and 4 assists. Draymond also did his thing, 5 points, but 10 boards, 9 assists, 1 steal and 4 blocks for Draymond Green. No Boogie Cousins, so Andy Bogut started again. I don't get it, no idea. Jordan Bell out of the rotation pretty much entirely. He played 1 minute and 36 seconds. Bogut is just a very, very deep league guy. Eunice Repko, again, who Kerr at the start of the day.
You can call me Coach Steve.
Said that he was the odd man out of the rotation. While odd man out played 18 minutes and scored 18 points. He took Jordan Bell's minutes. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there, but there's no real utility in him or McKinney or Cook or Looney or Bell. They're all just going to be sort of ups and downs. For the Wolves, Karl Anthony Towns, 26 and 21. I'll say it again, it's so refreshing to not see him stand in the corner while Wiggins and Teague and Rose take all the shots in the world as Tom Thibodeau decides that we don't want big men to be, or our best player to touch the ball. Wiggins actually had a pretty good game, to be fair to him. 20 points, took 19 shots, true Wiggins style, but 8 rebounds and 6 assists for Wiggo. While Tyus Jones, just horrible shooting, 10 points, but 7 assists worked out pretty nicely. And I think that Teague will miss a little bit more time here, so Jones has that back end value. Bates Diop has really dropped off with Wiggins back. He missed all 5 of his shots in this one. The next game we look at is the Brooklyn Nets. An unbelievable comeback by the Nets to beat the Kings 123-121. They outscored them by 30 points in the fourth quarter on the back of DAngelo Russell, who played 38 minutes and had 44 points, 6 triples, 4 rebounds, 12 assists and 4 steals on 52% shooting. Unbelievable to see what he has been doing this season. A guy that I've really liked for a couple of seasons from a fantasy point of view. I was frustrated with the way that Kenny Atkinson handled him in the past. Not this year. The 41st ranked player over the course of the season in only 30 minutes. Still could be due another 3 or 4 minutes. He'd be a top 20 guy almost. 21 points, 7 assists, 1.2 steals, and 3 triples. I still worry about some of his ability moving forward. Can he sustain, or can he get his free throw rate up, because it's really low? The free throw actually conversion percentage is well down at the moment too, but putting up some good numbers and should be able to maintain consistent, at least top 50 numbers for the next 4 or 5 seasons, I would guess. Really, really strong stuff. The Nets schedule is absolutely brutal. They have the Lakers, that's fine, they can win that one, but they have the Blazers and the Sixers on the road, and then they play, I think, the Celtics, the Bucks, the Raptors, all in a row. So they needed this win. They were in real danger of dropping out of the playoffs, and this is huge from Russell to lead them to this victory. Also, out of nowhere, Rondé Hollis-Jefferson played the last 17 minutes of this game, had 14 and 5 with 3 assists, 2 steals, and a block. And this bloke hasn't played in ages. Out of the rotation because he's been dreadful this season. I don't think this is anything to look at in terms of, do we add him in 12s or 14s or 16s? But it was good to see him produce a big game after a bad season. Smokin' Joe Harris struggled 9 points in his 20 minutes. LeVert, he is a drop, as I mentioned earlier, 6 points in 24, while Rowdy Rodion's Kuruks, 6 points on 2 of 9 shooting, which is bad, but 2 steals and 2 blocks. This guy's going to be a top 100 player. I think next year, definitely the year after would be my guess. For the Kings, you cannot leave Marvin Bagley on the waiver wire. 29 minutes, 28 points, 7 rebounds. He played over Willie Cauley-Stein as he should. Cauley-Stein only played 19 minutes because he's not that good. We saw a lot of the Bielitsa-Bagley front court, which is what Jaeger should be going for. But this was a massively disappointing loss for the Kings, who are absolutely out of the playoffs now. Bagley should be rostered in all leagues. De'Aaron Fox had 27 and 9, while the pencil, Harrison Barnesy, 17 and 7 with 3 triples, solid enough to remain rostered. Bogdan Bogdanovic, only 18 minutes. I think we have to move on from him in 12-team leagues. A really poor run from him, while Budrick Hield couldn't hit anything. Added 3 steals and a block, which is nice, but only 8 points. I think we give him a pass after some really strong performances of late. The next game we look at, the Indiana Pacers losing to the Clippers on the road. No Darren Collison, as I mentioned. Miles Turner took advantage of playing the Clippers, as centers always do. 11 and 5 with a steal and 5 blocks. Domantas Sabonis took advantage of playing the Clippers, as centers always do. 13 and 16 with 6 assists. Back on track. Thad Young, offensively not much there, but nice full peripheral line, 9-7-3 with a 1-1, while Tyreek had 19, 8 and 7, no other peripherals, his best game in a long time. And as I said, Collison's likely going to be out for Thursday's game, so that does give Thad at least, Tyreek at least an opportunity to have another game with value, but it's uncertain, and he's not a 12-team ad by any stretch of the imagination at this point. But good to see him back on track. Corey Joseph is the one that started. He didn't do all that much. He had 4 assists and 4 steals, but nothing else. And the 20 minutes and those steal numbers are pretty fluky. For the Clippers, I love what Shea is doing. 17, 3 and 3 for Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Finally, Doc Rivers is giving him the extra minutes he should have been getting all season. He's a 12-team stream type of a guy. He's not a must-roster guy, but he's close enough to it that you have to take that flyer look at him. The Rooster, another 24 points. The Table, 20 and 12, a big game from Montrezl Harrell. Zubats had 12 and 9, solid enough as a 14-teamer, while Lou Williams struggled a bit here, while Landry Shamet, he is not a 12-team league guy. He's not a 14-team league guy. He's streamable for threes because he hit 2 more of them. He just doesn't do anything else. And that's where we're at. If you're looking between, say, Shamet and KCP, they're probably equivalent at this point, with KCP outperforming what Landry Shamet is doing at this stage of the season. Let's move on now to talk some DFS by starting off by looking at the perfect lineups over on DraftKings. Jimmy Harden, JJ Redick, Tyreek Evans, Toby Harris, Brook Lopez, DAngelo Russell, Jeremy Lamb, and Kentavious CaldwellPope, and that was 410 points and cost $49,600. On FanDuel, we've got Ben Simmons, Steph Curry, Jeremy Lamb, DAngelo Russell, JJ Redick, Tyreek Evans, Toby Harris, Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, and Brookie Lopez for a total of $397.2, and that cost $60,000 dues. All right, let's look over DFS for Wednesday's games. We've got a 9-game slate across the NBA for Wednesday. We're going to be focusing mainly on DraftKings pricing today. The first game we look at is the Milwaukee Bucks traveling to take on the Cleveland Cavaliers. This is a back-to-back for the Bucks. They beat the Lakers on Tuesday, and there are some definite injury issues here for Milwaukee. Giannis Antetokounmpo didn't play on Tuesday. We don't know his status at this point for Wednesday. Ersan Ilyasova was a late scratch on Tuesday, so that enabled quite a few guys to get big bumps in minutes for that Milwaukee team. So there's quite a few things we do have to pay some attention to here. Closing in on lock time before we find out information about how that all looks for this squad and for this roster. At point guard, I do really like Eric Bledsoe, though, at $6,500. That's a strong price for Bled. He's been putting up some pretty okay numbers. The free throw shooting hasn't been great for him, but I still think at that salary, he is absolutely worth looking at. While on the Cavs side of things, the Padawan Colin Sexton has been consistently giving us 30 a night. He is up to 5,800, which is obviously a little bit higher than we're used to with him, but with how consistently good he has been of late, he's got some cash value with a level of upside. Not my strongest play of the day. Brandon Knight with Matty Dellavedova out, is putting up some strong numbers. Daly is out again, and the Cavs guys, the big men, they're all likely, or not likely, they're all listed questionable. Larry Nance, Kevin Love, and Tristan Thompson, but Dellavedova has been ruled out in advance. So there's some question marks in that Cavs front court, but the back court, we're going to see some extra minutes for Brando. At 3,600 for Nida, I do think that there is some use or some value in him. Chrissy Middleton at 6,700. Irrespective of Giannis being in or out, I like that for Middleton. If Giannis is out, we love that for Middleton. And while Paddy Connaughton at 3,600 played fairly well against the Lakers, he got that extra opportunity with both Giannis and Ersan being out, and he would become at 3,600, I think, a relatively strong cash play as a floor option. Sauce Castillo, minimum salary, 24 points in 24 minutes last game. He's getting extra run with Dellavedova out. He is in maybe a tournament guy, but even not one I'm really super interested in. While Tone Snell, he started with Yanni out and did absolutely nothing. He is one of the worst fantasy players in the entire NBA. At small forward, Chetty Osman's at 5,700. Putting up some pretty good numbers with or without Kevin Love, which has always been his issue in the past. I like him here in this one. While Yanni's at 11,400, I sincerely doubt that Antetokounmpo plays in this game against the Cavs. But if he does at an $11,400 salary, I think he is he's worth a look, no doubt. For the big men, Kevin Love, I wouldn't want to use him necessarily in anything other than a tournament. Mirotic at 4,900 had a really big game on Tuesday. The game before that was piss poor, and the minutes were the same. So it's not like you really benefited from this massively increased role. Yes, some extra touches with Yanni out, and if Yanni is out again at 4,900, Nick does become a pretty good tournament guy. Larry Nance is at 49. I'm not really getting into him. Zizic, Tristan Thompson, DJ Wilson, all these guys' value is going to be heavily dependent on the statuses of a lot of these other players. Say if Ersan's out, then DJ Wilson, who played over 30 minutes on Tuesday at 3,100 in the mix. Brook Lopez putting up some really good numbers, 5,400. No reason that I wouldn't want to use him. Really, really like Brook Lopez here, and he absolutely dominated the Lakers. Off FanDuel, let's have a look at it. Mirotic at 5,000, good value there with him. Eric Bledsoe, I like. Osman at 66, maybe a little bit too high. I think the 13,000 for Yanni is too high, and 6,400 for Lopez on a back-to-back. It just gives me a little bit of reason for pause with that salary, but it's not a terrible one. And of course, we just have to see how everything shakes out in that front court mix there in Cleveland with all those three guys listed as questionable at the moment. Let's go to the next game. We're looking at the Boston Celtics at the Philadelphia 76ers. The Sixers on a back-to-back narrowly escaped Tuesday with a victory over the Hornets. The Sixers are 3-point favorites. The total is 226. Embiid sat out on Tuesday. He will be back on Wednesday, while Al Horford is listed as probable, and Gordon Hayward is not going to play due to his concussion. For the point guards, Marcus Smart's at 4,600. Relatively consistent with Hayward out. I think it helps him a little bit. Not the best option out there, but it's at least something. While I do really like the 9,100 for Kyrie Irving, who's been averaging 57 points over his last 5 games. He looks really good. Ben Simmons at 8,100. Well, he crushed it without Embiid, unsurprisingly. But when Joel is there, it does put a limit on Simmons, and I think that makes him a fade guy. Shooting guards, JJ Redick had 56 points on Tuesday. Some of that's a factor of Embiid being out, a lot of assists, a lot of extra touches, a lot of extra shots. I think at 5,000, he's more of a tournament guy. While Jaylen Brown was very disappointing last time out for Boston. Only 16 points, only 20 minutes. At 4,500, you would expect him to have value with Hayward out, but last time gives me a little bit of nervousness regarding his value, so I'm not super involved. While General Soreness, Jimmy Butler, averaging over 40 in his last 5, 7,300. It's a pretty good price. I'd feel better about using him than, say, Tobias Harris, who is seems to be more impacted by Embiid than Butler does. Marcus Morris got the big bulk of the minutes last game with Hayward out. He's at 5,400. He's an interesting enough GPP guy. Jason Tatum, I don't really see much value in him. He's struggling, although an excellent record against the Sixers, averaging 44 the last 3 times against Philadelphia, while Prison Mike was a disaster on Tuesday, just 1 point in 15 minutes, and he fouled out. Toby Harris at 71. The salary is good, but realistically just a GPP guy, I believe. For the big men, I love Al Horford here. Sub 6,000, 5,900. Does well against Embiid generally. That's a very, very cheap price for Al, so I'm in on that. While Embiid, on the other hand, at 10,000, you got to love that salary. Coming back, should be putting up 50 plus here. No reason that he's not an option as well. Boban, Bainsey, Vanilla Tice, no love for any of those guys. On FanDuel, Marcus Morris, again, that GPP guy. Love Horford at 67. Marcus Smart, I think, comes in pretty strongly at 5,200 on FanDuel. Same with Jalen at 48, but I'll probably just defer Jalen into the tournaments more than the cash lineups. Butler at 81, less impressive. The 72 for Tobias Harris, I'd rather have Toby on FanDuel than I would General Soreness. Next up, we've got the New Orleans Pelicans and the Orlando Magic. Only one of these teams want to win, and that is the Magic. They are 6.5 point favorites. The total is 225 in this matchup. Injury-wise, we're pretty good. Anthony Davis on track to play at this point. Isaiah Briscoe obviously out for the Orlando Magic. Drew Holiday also sidelined, and Etuan Moore. They're both out. At point guard, Mick Carter-Williams is a minimum salary guy who should be absorbing all of those backup minutes, but I don't really see him as being an option. While Frankie Jackson at 4,600 is going to start again for Drew. He's going to play mid-30s in minutes. He's going to score. He's going to do very little else, but he's going to score. And at 4,600, I think he has cash appeal. While DJ Augustin, 5,300, minutes are up, production's up. Love him at 5,300. I think there is a lot of value in him. Mr. March triple-double, Lord Alfred Payton. His lowest score in his last 5 games has been 51. That is astonishing. He's averaging 57 points over those 5 games, but he's all the way up to $8,000. And if you think the triple-double streak's going to continue, and why wouldn't you? It's still March. Then maybe there's something there, but I think that this is veering into fade territory for Payton. Evan Fournier's at 52. I don't really see much outside of a tournament play. Same as Terry Ross at 5,300. Well, Wes Iwundu went big last game, had 30 points, but I don't really trust that. Kenrick Williams at 41. He was also strong last time out for the Pelicans, but it's not one that we can really feel super confident about, and upside's limited. While Aaron Gordon at 72. I like Gordon as a good cash play with also 50-point upside. Amazingly, though, Gordon's highest score this season is just 50 points, so it's not like he's got sky-high ceiling. Darius Miller's not really working for me. For the big man, Check Diallo, 3,800. I love that salary. He's been a 20-point guy most nights, so that gives him value in itself. And then if he does get some extra production, then it really helps. While Nikola Vucevic, 9,500. The Pelicans centers matchup have been excellent for opposing teams of late. So I do like Vuce significantly here with 60-point value potentially coming his way. Julius Randle at 8,300, same. He's a 50-point type of guy. Love his cash value. While Tone Davis is at $7,000. I just feel there's really limited upside in Tone with how the minutes are shaking out. He could be a cash guy, but I don't think that he is necessarily the best option to use on this pretty crowded 9-game slate. On FanDuel, Vooch at 10.5, I like. Diallo at 45, probably more for tournaments. Johnny Isaac, I think too high. Aaron Gordon, I like on FanDuel as well. And Julius Randle's up to 9,000, but I don't think that price precludes using him, while Alfred Payton at 9,500. I just cannot get on board that. That just seems ludicrously too high, and it is going to burn you at some point. I feel pretty confident about saying that. The next game, the Utah Jazz and the New York Knicks. The Jazz are 12-point favorites. The total is 212. Literally nobody knows what Fizdale is going to do on a daily basis. Noah Vonleh is out, so expect more minutes for Mario Hezonja. And maybe he's going to send a message to his starters again. Maybe he isn't, but I would expect Damo Dots and DeAndre Jordan to all see their minutes jump up, and guys like Alonzo Trier to see their minutes drop down. But again, it's Fizdale. Anything can happen. Dennis Smith has also been ruled out, so Emmanuel Mudiay is a point guard, 4,600. Shitful last game. Absolutely shitful, but prior to that, he was putting up good numbers, so I'm happy to get back on and probably get my balls burnt by some terrible performances, but I'm willing to go there again. Ravishing Rick Rubio's at 4,900. His recent performances have made that number seem like it makes sense. And again, a positive matchup against the Knicks. I'd be okay with using Rubio, especially for cash, while Donovan Mitchell, the Don.
He's Don. He's good.
7,800 for the Don. I don't like that production from him as much when he's playing alongside Rubio. Probably more of a tournament guy, but the matchup is very, very enticing. Alonzo Trier, 4,200. He had 32 points last game, but that was one of those weird minute spike games that Fizdale loves throwing at us. While Frankie Ntilikina is questionable, but he's not going to put up any sort of numbers regardless of if he plays or not. Damo Dotson's at 5,200 had been a measure of consistency until he got fizzed last game. I think I'd be happy to go back on him, even though, again, I'm just setting myself up for disappointment. While Jingle and Joe's at 5,700. I think limited tournament appeal, but a solid enough cash floor. Mario Hezonja, it's a me. He's at 3,700. He should play big minutes. He should start again, and that makes him a cash option. But again, saying cash and Knicks in the same ballpark, in the same 5-minute time frame of a show, is a scary proposition. Jay Crowder's at 4,800. He got an elevated role last game with Derek Favors out. Favors will be back in this game most likely. So that puts a little bit of the kibosh on the Crowder pump up. And then for the Fort, Kevin Knox at 4,600. He is a player who is priced at 4,600. For the big men, DeAndre Jordan, 5,700. 20-minute DeAndre Jordan, 30-minute DeAndre Jordan. God knows which one we're going to get. I think we probably get closer to 30-minute, and that makes him at 5,700 a good play, but the trust or reliability you have in Fizdale, you know that it's limited, while Mitchell Robinson's all the way down to 4,500, making him a great multi-GPP lineup guy who can very easily go for 40, and at 4,500 that would work pretty nicely. Gobert is at 8,200, should annihilate this Knicks team with a consistent 40-point floor, so I really like him for cash, while Favors at 58 feels probably a little bit too elevated in my opinion. On FanDuel, You got Manny Moutier at 5,000 and Damo Dotson at 57, some ones to get back on the wagon with. And then you got Jordan and Robinson, both interesting tournament guys. And Jordan leaning a little bit more cash. Hazonia at 47. It's pushing it a little bit too high, Fangel. I think you need to just calm down somewhat on that salary. Bump $900 up, and that might lead me to at least not have him as a lockish type of guy. Gobert's at 98, probably also a little bit too high. And Mitchell at 88, let's leave him for the tournaments. The next game up, the Rockets and the Grizzlies. The Rockets are on a back-to-back here in this game. The Rockets are 4-point favorites. The total is 216. Eric Gordon is out of this one due to rest. So we're going to see an extra opportunity again for Big Danny House to put up some numbers. Iman Shumpert sat out Tuesday. He'll likely return to the rotation. And for Memphis, Triple J's out, Kyle Anderson's out, and Avery Bradley is listed as questionable. So it could be a real disaster type lineup for the Grizzlies. As for Brattles, he is at 4,900, and I really like that salary if he plays. You really, really like it if he's in. If not, of course I don't. Chris Paul's at 6,900.
Giggity!
I think we have a chance of Paul's minutes being reduced here, so only for tournaments it is a back-to-back. While if Avery's out, Delon Wright's at 4,800, and I'd feel pretty good about using him. Michael Conley, 7,900. He has just been annihilating teams, averaging 49 over his last 5. At a sub $8,000 price, I'd be no problem with going with that. Well, Jimmy Harden's at 11,300. I worry about the wrist. I worry about a surprise rest. I worry about a reduced minutes load here for Harden. That all puts him into just that tournament area. Austin Rivers, that's going to be a no from me. The shooting guards, Justin Holiday, yeah, cool. Tyler Dorsey, Iman Shumpert, no interest in any of those guys. But at small forward, the guy we're looking at here is Big Danny House. 3,900. He's shooting the ball crazily, but I'm more impressed with the minutes, and this should be an opportunity for him to start with Eric Gordon now, averaging 26 over the last 3 since returning to this Rockets lineup. I'm not massively into House, but at sub 4,000, I can't avoid him, really. That's really, really good. 3,300 for Chandler Parsons, who out of nowhere had 34 points last game. I would consider it just because of what he did last game, but I wouldn't be relying upon it, no way. PJ Tucker, not interested there. While Bruno Caboclo started last game, played 7 minutes, because why not? For the big man, Ivan Rabb, 3,600. He should be getting more minutes. Bickerstaff's the coach, so he won't. Joakim Noah at 5,100. He's been consistently eclipsing that number, so I don't hate him as an option. He's definitely worth looking at. Well, Jonas Valanciunas, 6,600. I think that's maybe a little bit too high with the element of risk baked in there. I'd leave him out of it. While Clinty Capella, 7,600. It was a bit slow going from Capella after he returned from his injury, but lately he's churning out 40.9 after 40.9, and another 40.9 could be coming. The problem is there's a limited margin for error with Capella, and there are better options out there on the board. Kenny Fareed is not one of those. On to FanDuel. Yeah, Danny House, 3,900. We really like that. Rab's got at least some GPP upside. Delon at 52. If Avery Bradley is out, works pretty nicely for me as well. Capella at 82. A more impressive FanDuel situation for him rather than DraftKings. I think JV's too high. Harden at 12-1's probably a little bit too elevated. And 9,000 for Mike Conley. I don't feel super confident about that, especially against a Rockets team who's been really, really good at defending opposition point guards for most of this season. Next up, we look at the Washington Wizards and the Chicago Bulls. The Wizards are 2-point favorites here. The Bulls, the total, is 233. Bobby Portis revenge game, Jabari Parker revenge game back in Chicago. Parker's been playing really, really well lately. Portis has been doing the opposite of that. The Bulls are also going to be without Otto Porter, as I suggested the other day, that rotator cuff will keep him out multiple games. And now Zach LaVine has appeared on the injury report with a thigh contusion. If he is out, that means way more minutes for Big Shaq Harrison.
Big Shaq.
And big Ryan Archer-Jacquino as well. We'll get some extra run there. Maybe Saldo or Timothé Luwawu-Cabarrot are going to be pushed into the mid-20s in playing time if both Porter and Levine happen to sit at point guard. Big Shaq's at 3,200. If he gets 20 points, he's made value, and I think that he is a very, very strong play. He should be pretty chalky as well, but I like him. Satoransky down at 5,600. That's a low price for Thomas. The last couple of games haven't quite been there, but against this Bulls team, he can really go off. While Chris Dunn's all the way down at 5,400, and especially if Levine is out, I think Dunn breaks that number and breaks it pretty comfortably. Levine's at 78, which we would really, really like if we knew he was going to play, while Arch at 3,300. Archer Jacquino is more just a tournament guy who occasionally has the big game. It just doesn't happen often enough. Brad Beal was bad last game, under 20 points, but prior to that, he was getting 50 every game, and at 9,400, I'd be happy to go back to him. Troy Brown got some extra minutes, but he's not really an option. Saldo, probably not as well. Ariza's down at 4,600, and that's the only reason that I'm looking at him as an option is that salary, more just for tournaments. Jabari's at 6,000. He's giving us 30 points every night at the moment. It feels like the bubble will burst at some stage, but I think at 6,000 he is in play as an option here for cash and for tournaments. The big men, Lowry's down at 7,100. He sort of broke back out of a slump last game, but still only had 35 points. So I do like it because the matchup is so good against Jabari and Jeff Green and Bobby Portis. That's a really good matchup for opposition power forward / centers. But I'm not locking him into every lineup. While Punch Bob himself at 5,700 had 36 the last time these two teams met. He's not playing those many minutes, level of minutes anymore. But of course he is a GPP guy. While Robin Lopez at 6,300, that seems crazy. The numbers have been there consistently. Again, you just worry about a bubble being burst. You don't feel confident that Robin Lopez is going to do this every single night, even though he has been. So I'd tread a little bit carefully with Big Rob Lopez in this one. On to FanDuel. Big Shaq looks great. Beal, Lowry, Dunn, Jabari, some good value in a lot of those guys. Ariza is a 5,700 GPP guy, and Punch Bob is a 56 GPP guy. Also look pretty tasty. I think the 6,400 for Robin Lopez is a much better FanDuel bet than it is on DraftKings. Next game up, the Miami Heat and the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs are 6-point favorites. The total is 209. Hassan Whiteside barely saw the court last game. We don't know what his status is going to be here. We do know that Justice Winslow is out, so that boosts up the value for guys like Derek Jones Jr. and Goran Dragic, and it also puts Jimmy Johnson back into the mix after a couple of strong games from him. At point guard, Dwayne Wade's at 4,800. I love what Wade's been doing. 25 a night comfortably. Love him to do it again here. While Forbesy, not interested. Goran Dragic, the iron shoulder, am interested in him. Love what he's been doing with Winslow out. And at 5,300, that's a strong spot for him. While Derek White's at 55, I would prioritize the iron shoulder Goran Dragic over Derek White. But White at that price is still relatively okay. Shooting guard, you got Bellinelli. No. DeRozan 77, yes, love that floor for DeMar, really putting up consistent numbers. While Joshie Richardson, if the shot falls, he's going to smash value because he's on about 4 out of about his last 100 shots, I think, that he's hit, but he's getting assists, he's getting rebounds, there's some steals coming in. And last game, for example, 29 points in 40 minutes, but hit about 3 shots. So if the shots go in, then the value is going to be there. So it makes him a really interesting GPP guy, and recency bias will be like, can't use Richardson, he burnt me. So his ownership percentage or his roster percentage will be down, and that should give you a GPP edge. Now, he could shit the bed because his shooting's been off for a long time, but if it just hits, then you go to a 45, 50 point type of a guy at 5,700, and that obviously works in your favor. Small forwards, you're looking at Derek Jones Jr., 3,400, only a GPP guy, and it's only going to come on those nights where he has those weird, really huge steal and block type performances. Rudy Gay at 52, love what he's doing for cash. Tournaments probably not as much. While at the center spot, you got Bam Bam Adebayo.
Bam, 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 bam.
He was relatively disappointing last game and still had 27 points. That makes him a strong cash option. While Jakob Poeltl, I'd spend that $600 extra to get Bam over Jakob, who's at 4,500. He's not a terrible option, but I don't like him for cash and maybe a bit limited for tournaments. While Aldridge down at 7,900, no reason to get overly invested in him, but also no reason to completely avoid LaMarcus. He's an okay play. While Kelly Olynyk at 5,400, sort of back on track the last couple of games, and with the absence of Winslow, it's helping his playing time. So I think that Kelly at 54 is at least a tournament guy. Well, James Johnson came out of nowhere for 31 points last game with Winslow out and Scooter Magruder out again at 3,300. That is an appealing GPP guy, but I wouldn't trust it as a lock to occur. And I'd look at it more for your multi-tournament lineup situations. On FanDuel, Poeltl at 51 has a bit of appeal there. Dragic at 55 I like quite a bit. I think Wade is maybe a little bit overpriced. DeRozan at 89 is pushing a little bit too high, but I don't completely dislike it. Whiteside, we're not going to really bother too much with him. And Olynyk at 54 I think comes in pretty strong on FanDuel. Next up, the Toronto Raptors and the Oklahoma City Thunder. No spread or total at this point. Russell Westbrook is back, but Kyle Lowry, we don't know his status at this point. The fun guy, Kawhi Leonard.
I'm a fun guy.
He missed last game due to rest. He should be back. I said we don't know Lowry's status. His status is questionable, meaning he's a 50-50 chance of playing with that ankle injury. If he is out, then Freddie VanVleet gets that big bump there. For the Thunder, last game, Nerlens Noel was a late scratch. We saw minutes for Paddy Patterson, Deontay Burton, Jeremy Grant got extra bump, so they're the guys you'd be looking at in that scenario. I like Westbrook here a lot, 10,300. 50 point feels like not a guarantee, but pretty bloody close. While Freddles VanVleet for 4,700. That's a big price rise. If Lowry's out, I'm all about VanVleet here. As for Kyle himself, 7,400. Really just a GPP guy with the uncertainty. Schroeder at 53 would be a pretty good fade, I believe. At shooting guard, Dan Green, that's going to be a no from me. Terry Ferguson, the same. And then at small forward, Kawhi Leonard is all the way down at 8,400. I would be all the way in on using him. I love that salary for Kawhi. While Paulie George down at 9,800. He had 57 last game without Russ, but he puts up numbers with or without Westbrook, 50-pointers pretty consistently. If there's going to be a game I fade him, it's probably this one against the Raptors, but he's still a pretty clear option in all formats. For the big men, you've got Jeremy Grant at 4,800. If Nerlens is out, I'd at least look at him as a cash option. And then we've got Serge Ibaka returning for the Raptors after his 3-game suspension. So that makes both he and Marc Gasol very risky plays. Steven Adams is at 5,600. I like the price for Adams. His recent production has been pretty good and it's been right in that ballpark, if not over. I still don't think he's the best center option on that board, but he's a good low to mid-price guy that you can consider. That's not an overpay for Adams at all. On FanDuel, Kawhi and Russell I really like there. Jeremy Grant at 56 is probably pushing a bit too far, but it's not a complete dislike for cash. While Lowry at 77, I think he's a strong GPP option. On FanDuel if you're creating multiple lineups. The matchup suits him, and I think his roster percentage will be pretty low if he does end up playing, or if we don't hear if he's playing until lineup lock. The last game of the night is the Dallas Mavericks and the Portland Trail Blazers. The Blazers are 10-point favourites, and the total is 217.5. We're expecting another big Damo Lillard night with CJ McCollum out. Maxi Kleber is questionable for the Mavs with a wrist issue. Lillard's at 8,800. That is an absolute smash play to me. Love that for him. While Seth Curry at 34, like that for tournaments quite a bit. He saw an increased role with CJ McCollum out. And then Doncic is at 8,900. He's averaging 51 points over the last 5. Pretty hard to not get interested there. The burner, Jalen Brunson's up to 6,000. I think that wipes away a lot of his value. And in a somewhat negative matchup, I'd probably end up fading him. Rocket Rodney Hood is always just a GPP guy. He's so inconsistent and did not take advantage of McCollum's absence last game at all. Well, Timmy Hardaway's back in the mix. 30-point average over the last 3 at 5,200. He's getting some extra minutes. If Kleber's out, I think that helps Hardaway a little bit more as well. Probably still more tournaments, but he's at least getting back into the discussion. The Chief Al-Farouq Aminu is always just a tournament guy.
Sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
And Mo Harkless at 44 really stepped it up last game. I'm not really putting a huge amount of trust in him. Same with Jake Layman, who's been very, very poor. He has those weird scoring nights where he goes 8 of 10 for 22 points. At 3,300, and with the absence of CJ and a likely starting opportunity for Layman, he's in your tournament pool, but I wouldn't be getting too excited about it. And then for the big men, you got to love Nurk at 7,100. This should be close to a 40-pointer. Dwight Powell at 6,300. He should be giving you 32 or 33, although I think his ceiling is relatively limited, Powell, so you might find better center options around on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, Lillard's at 10.7. I'm still happy to go with that. Dwighty Powell's at 69.
Giggity.
Probably pushing a little bit too high there for Paolo. While 8,700 for Nurkic is also on the high side and not one that I'm super interested in. I like Seth Curry at 3,700, and the burner Jalen Brunson is a better FanDuel play than he is over on DraftKings. Let's have a look at some studs and value plays. On DraftKings, I'm going for Vucevic as a stud, and the value is Big Shaq Harrison. On FanDuel, the stud is Vucevic, and the value is Big Shaq Harrison. On Yahoo, the stud is Damian Lillard, and the value is Big Shaq Harrison. And on DraftStars, the value play is Vucevic, and the stud is Big Shaq Harrison. You could also throw Lillard in as a stud on all those, and Danny House as a value play on most of those sites. Also, don't forget, The Major League Baseball channel of the Locked On Network is relaunching on Monday, so go and find your favorite teams Locked On podcast. If your team's not there, it will appear very soon as we start to get all these hosts sorted out for the start of baseball season. Locked On MLB has already restarted back up. So while you're in the car, why don't you tell your smart device to play the podcast Locked On and then insert your team name there. Follow me on Twitter at redrock_Beeble, and on YouTube, give it a subscribe, hit the bell, leave a comment, and give it a thumbs up. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Doc Rivers.